Today we're going to replace the EGR valve on this GM 4.3 liter engine. Now you can see that this is a relatively new EGR valve and it's very straightforward to access here. So we can just release the little locking tab on the electrical connector, get that out of the way. Then I'm going to take my ratchet with a 10mm socket and remove the two mounting bolts which hold the EGR valve in place. So you can see this is a relatively new one here, but this is a sample I had accessible to me and just wanted to illustrate the process as we seem to receive some questions about these on our tech line. So we're going to illustrate what it takes to do this. As you can see, it is relatively straightforward, but there could be a few little hiccups along the way with the process. So I wanted to kind of share some best practices and tips here. So we're removing the two bolts. And it's ideal to do this on a cool engine because, true to its name, exhaust gas recirculation valve, this can be a little warm. So one thing we see sometimes on these is carbon contamination in the valve. As we've got carbon coming through the intake towards the exhaust, if the valve is open, a piece of carbon could get stuck inside of here and hold it open. So that's one of the things we need to be careful of. And we want to make sure that the intake is clean. I've seen technicians scrape in here, or maybe even do an upper intake cleaning service, and then they're going to take an air hose and kind of blow all the debris out of there. I've even seen some cases where a technician will start the engine this way. Keep in mind we're going to have open exhaust and open intake, so we'll have some sort of an intake leak at that point, but that will certainly blast all the carbon out of the exhaust side. So we've got our new valve with our new gasket here, and so we're going to want to get them lined up, and then in some cases the technician might stick it to the intake here. I'm going to recommend that we don't use silicone though, because that can get ingested in an intake and potentially poison the O2 sensors, causing some erroneous readings. So one of the other tips I want to make very clear here is when this gets reinstalled, reinstall it in the correct orientation. Notice how this came off the electrical connector where it is. This will actually bolt up backwards. And so it can physically be bolted the opposite direction and it'll work. There might be a little bit of an intake leak, and it's certainly not going to operate as designed when the EGR valve is commanded open. But yes, I have seen instances where a car came into my shop with the EGR valve installed backwards. So one of the most important things we need to do here today is to ensure that it's oriented properly. And at this point, we simply install the two new bolts, make our electrical connection, clear out any trouble codes, and in some cases maybe use a scan tool with bidirectional controls to open and close it, ensure that things are working properly. And just like that, we've replaced the EGR valve on a GM 4.3 liter engine.